The Alaska Triangle is one of the most mysterious and dangerous places on Earth. So few people live here, yet so many disappear.
When we look at the Alaska Triangle, it's absolutely frightening. Ships have gone missing, planes have been down, people have disappeared and vanished off the face of the Earth.
They're there 1 second and then they're just gone, and they don't find remains, they don't find any good reason for them to disappear.
But in the Alaska Triangle, the greatest risk is taking to the air. More than 2,000 planes have crashed or vanished here in the last 20 years. And the disappearance of one plane, a Douglas C-54, has troubled investigators more than any other.
Could the Douglas craft have flown into a portal? And is a portal part of the inherent mystery in the Alaska Triangle?
I think what could have happened to the missing Douglas is probably one of the most important mysteries on the planet.
It's 1950, the year after NATO was formed, the start of the Cold War. And on January 26th, a Douglas C-54 military transport plane with 44 people on board took off from Alaska's Elmendorf Air Base, in the middle of the Alaska Triangle. Two hours into the flight, it disappeared.
How, in 1950, could a plane this size, with 44 people on board, vanish in the Alaska Triangle?
It remains a mystery to this day.
One man is on a quest to find out what happened to the Douglas.
This was a C-54 standard military transport, carried people, cargo, equipment, things like that.
With a wingspan of over 100 feet, the Douglas C-54 was one of the most important planes in the U.S. Air Force.
This was a routine troop repositioning, troop redeployment, and they always carried supplies and other things. This was a well-documented, well-known, well-practiced flight from Alaska, Elmendorf, down to what was called the lower 48, all right, the main part of America, where this plane was actually based. This particular C-54 was carrying 36 passengers, some military dependents, and 8 crew members. The plane took off from Elmendorf Air Force Base, headed east 240 miles to its first mandatory reporting point, right on the border of the Yukon Territory and Alaska, a little town called Snag. Made its radio call over Snag, on time, using a VHF radio, and then it vanished without a trace. Snag is typical of auxiliary fields that were built all up and down the northwest staging route that we use to get men and equipment up into Alaska. And it is in the middle of nowhere. Had a permanent population of maybe 10, 15 people, some fur traders, some Alaska natives, that sort of thing. You gotta remember, this is gold rush country. This is Dawson, this is the Yukon Territory. There is nothing up there except, in this case, this little village around this ox field, and its sole purpose in life is a radio reporting point for airplanes that are transiting the northwest staging area. So what made this so important was it was a radio reporting point. We had radar, but it was very primitive, and it was pointed this way towards the Soviet Union. All right, we weren't really concerned about any threat coming from down in the Yukon Territory of the United States. So over hundreds of thousands of square miles, which is what this is, planes would mandatorily report using a VHF radio, like this C-54 has, and say, I am over Snag at this point at this time, and that way they could keep track via radio communications of where the airplane was. That is the last point that this C-54 was heard from.
Historian Sasha Auerbach has been looking into recently released government files from the Cold War.
Nuclear weapons were the most powerful thing that the U.S. had. They always had more of them than Russia did, and they wanted them within reach of the Soviet Union. So Alaska was the natural launching point for the bombers. They want every strategic advantage, and Alaska is absolutely the key to that.
Elmendorf was built in Anchorage to protect the northern edge of the United States. It's equipped with all the latest technology, radars, strategic bombers, and fighters, specifically to combat the threat from the Soviet Union.
We're talking about one of the most surveilled airspaces in the world at the time. This was supposed to be where America was most prepared for an invasion, where it was most concerned about Russian planes coming over. So the fact that they lost a plane with all these radio assets watching this whole area must have been really galling.
At the time of the disappearance, the U.S. and Canadian armed forces were about to start a big war games operation. But now, the missing plane took top priority.
They canceled the war games and put all those resources and people into this search effort.
Confidence was high. The U.S. military in Alaska were experts in search and rescue.
The Rescue Coordination Center at Elmendorf keeps busy the year round, including Air Force and Army search and rescue efforts in Alaska's vast inland region.
7,000 ground troops and 85 aircraft were deployed to help in the search.
What this is comes out of the original Air Force accident reports. This shows the extensive, enormous search area that these 85 planes undertook to try to find this C-54.
They end up searching about 300,000 square miles of territory, which is massive. It's a space the size of Venezuela.
The scale of this is unprecedented. So it makes you wonder, was there really something special or unique about this flight that it had to be found? Was it because there's somebody on board that made it necessary to find it?
A list of the passengers and crew reveals no one out of the ordinary. It was a routine flight. Perhaps there was something on board, a secret piece of tech, top secret information. Evidence of some kind that the authorities wanted to remain hidden.
Or was it necessary to find it because of where it went down?
Disappearing right on the edge of the triangle. Was it a sign of some unknown force at work? Something more dangerous, perhaps, than any human adversary?